everybody. Hello. How y'all doing? Oh, man. Oh, what's up, Mog? What's up, Pearl? Oh, gosh. Yeah, so I just got the Republican debate tonight. I know there's been some stories and everything. But that, I think, has been the major thing. I think that a lot of stuff is kind of, slower in the news cycle. There is some stuff going on, but we've got obviously the wildfires in Maui that took place. We have the hurricane that's about to hit here. So there's a lot going on, but there is Trump's mugshot as well, and I think he looked pretty 10. I mean, if I'm gonna have to make love to Trump, I mean, it would be that's probably one of the hotter pictures of him. Just saying. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well tonight. So we got a lot to say about the Republican debate here, and it was kind of interesting. First of all, I want to talk about a little bit of the commentary that I've seen surrounding it, because one thing that you can really judge, based on how the debate went, is you can often judge the debate on the commentary around it rather than what happened. And so, I try to watch news from a variety of sources. I try to get my information from a variety, including people that are generally supportive of the candidates, that are generally, not in support, etc. And so one of the things that I think is a really big misconception is that a lot of people are saying Trump won the debate because they're saying that, nobody really made a big splash and all this other stuff. And, it was great and, good for Trump, etc. because, nobody really showed why they were, in the race and capable of being better than he was. And I think that's not true. I think, first of all, we're going to see some of the soft support come from Trump. And obviously, he's going to have his diehard fans. He's obviously going to have his, people that are always going to be there for him, and they're just going to suck his cock, essentially, no matter what, he does or says. And that's obviously something that the candidates have to overcome, and so they've struggled with that, and they're going to continue to struggle with that. But here's the other thing, is Trump wasn't there to share his ideas, and I actually, what did he do? He did an interview with Tucker Carlson, which people were like, oh, like 80 billion people watched the Tucker Carlson interview. No, okay, they probably scrolled past it on Twitch, or, excuse me, not Twitch, X, or whatever the hell that site wants to call itself these days. That's what they probably did. Like, they might have watched a few minutes of it and, just kind of, you are going on an interview that's pre-recorded, probably edited, with somebody that's friendly to you. And you're trying to tell me that that's more interesting than hashing out your ideas against others. And so that, to me, especially, it shows weakness, whereas Trump never really shows weakness. It's a new side of Trump showing that weakness to avoid the run-ins with some of the other candidates, right? There's nothing wrong with it, Pearl, except when you are, doing it, you have to look at the motive for doing it. And so, the thing about it is that we're seeing Trump on a stage or we're not seeing Trump on a stage, and all the other candidates are getting their ideas across. Now, a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but Trump's been the president. He knows, people, know what they're buying, essentially. Actually, I asked my dad today, I said, who are you supporting? And he said, well, I'm supporting Trump. Like, I'm all in for Trump. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. I'm not voting for him, especially in the primary. Likely not in the general. And he said, oh, who would you want then, Ramaswamy? And I said, well, he's better than the others. And he said, well, I know what I'm buying with Trump and all this other stuff. And the reason that I think people that are saying that and my dad is wrong is because Trump's last year in the office was abysmal. Okay? But it didn't stop there. I still voted for him in 2020, right? I still did it. Wasn't happy about it, but I did it. But the problem was in 2022, okay? And the thing about Trump is you see a hardened base behind him, but it's not quite what you need in order to win. And so people are going to look at the actions of Trump and others and see that he's supporting candidates that are just not, great. Like, for instance, why was he supporting Herschel Walker? Herschel Walker was a terrible candidate, had no qualifications to run, had a lot of personal baggage, and his main thing was to go around and be an evangelical. And you're trying to be an evangelical, you're not trying to be an evangelical in Kansas or Indiana or, even Idaho or, one of those states. You're trying to be an evangelical in a state with a large urban center and, and then a few smaller ones like Savannah, Macon, you're trying to be an evangelical in a state like that where it just won't work. Your ideas are going to be paramount in that. And, in a state like Georgia, your ideas are going to play a much bigger role than trying to appeal to a Christian base. But then you have him supporting a candidate like that, but then also supporting a candidate like Dr. Oz, right? And when you kind of look at that, you're like, okay, what do those two have in common? Dr. Oz was certainly not an evangelical. Dr. Oz was actually well-spoken, right? If you actually watch the Pennsylvania debate, when Dr. Oz was speaking, he spoke well, but it was just boring, right? And then Fetterman kind of stole the show by just doing what a stroke victim would do, and just being completely, I guess, unintelligible with a lot of his ideas and whatnot, right? And so the problem there is that we see the weakness of Trump in that his consistency is off. And he's supporting people because they have high-profile names. Which makes me question, Kari Lake, I thought was a really good candidate. I think there was a few things that were wrong, but she knew how to deal with the media for the most part. I think she was a little bit more combative than a lot of people would like, but she knew how to deal with all that. And it makes me question, did you support Kari Lake because she was high profile? you know, and it seems like they almost like bought his endorsement, like Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz, because Dr. Oz had a lot of competition that I think would have more aligned with Trump's ideas, right? And as we kind of see from the Virginia election, Youngkin distanced himself from Trump a little bit. Like, yeah, took the endorsement, but then didn't really talk about it much and just talked about schooling, education, crime, and in a pretty blue state, was able to overturn, that blue state. And he's a pretty popular governor now, right? Like, he's pretty popular in Virginia. And so that's the kind of thing that the weight of a Trump endorsement brings. And, we also see in a year where the Democrats were really struggling and just having terrible ideas, and the public was against them in the most part, they still pretty much won the midterms, right? They had every disadvantage. Very unpopular president. Very, ideas that the American public just wasn't crazy about. People were also just kind of, in a year where, traditionally in a year where you have that unpopular president going into the midterms, you generally the opposing party gains seats just because, people are like, oh, I want to switch, I want to change, grass is greener, whatever. Yeah, I guess they gained, the Republicans gained a few seats in the House, but they're not really able to do anything, right? They didn't show the Democrats any lessons. They didn't scare them at all. Biden was absolutely correct when he said, well, Republicans, have a 5-seat, 6-seat advantage, something like that. All I have to do is turn around a few of them, with certain legislation proposals and whatnot. Like, all I have to do, is get a few of them on board. And you certainly have a lot of Republicans that would side with Biden on certain issues. So you didn't win Republicans. And part of that was Trump. Now, I also have to say that Ronna McDaniel isn't good at her job. I think she does the whole thing of trying to distance herself from Trump and distance the RNC from Trump, but also not completely turn her back, because she knows that she's, got kind of that chain, like you're tied to Trump. Like that's kind of the face of the Republican Party at the moment. You're kind of, your hands are tied. And so that's a pretty tough situation to be in. I'll give her that. But the problem there, I'm moving the wrong mouse. Sorry. I have two computers up. I have the back computer that is going to be teaching me, sorry. Give me one sec, guys. You've got the Republicans that are where was I? Oh, so you got Ronna McDaniel in the middle, but the problem is that the Republicans are just bad at strategy overall. They always just want to have their issues, and they want to approach the fruits of the issues rather than the root causes, right? And so I've talked about this so many times. This feels like Bill Clinton's midterm, where they threw Bob Dole as a candidate. Clinton's, yeah. Well, that was just a we know we're going to lose kind of a thing, I feel like, anyway. What's up, Chewy? How you doing? Chewy's been streaming actually lately, Mog. Chewy streams. He streams Dead by Daylight most of the time. Um, but what I feel like is that the Republicans are in this like terrible situation where they really want to pursue abortion. And we're going to talk about that in the Republican debate. That was obviously one of the issues that came up. Hey, Tukowski, how you doing? But they want to pursue all these issues that are not winners. So this brings us to the debate where the Republicans show how bad at strategy they are. And they show it before the debate even begins. Okay? This is a problem that I have. Hey, Rain, how you doing? This is a problem that I have with Republicans because they're just terrible at strategy. And so the first problem we have is before the debate even begins, they have this little, I guess, pact or, pledge that they had all the candidates sign. And the candidates, this is actually mentioned in the debate when they start talking about Trump a little bit. But what they actually had the candidates do was they had all the candidates sign a pledge that says, well, if you are going to participate in tonight's debate, we want you to pledge that even if you're not the winner, like you'll support the nominee. And so to me, this feels like kind of something like a Ronna McDaniel would do, because she's like, well, we want to show unity, we want to show strength, we want to get behind one candidate, and we want to make sure that everybody kind of falls in line with that. The problem with that is you are talking about doing that on your side, right? So why are you showing so much weakness in your candidates that you have to say, well, you have to support them, whoever we choose, no matter what? So, okay, so if Doug Burgum magically manages to, become the nominee, which would be absurd and is not going to happen in any world. If Doug Burgum manages to become the nominee, everyone has to support him because why? We saw Pence and Ramaswamy, trade blows a lot tonight, and really it was not really Pence trading blows. It was just Pence getting dunked on most of the night. But we saw, Ramaswamy and Pence, going back and forth. And, like, if they really didn't like each other, or, if they really had a problem with each other's views, are you saying that Pence still has to support Ramaswamy or vice versa? Like, even though they seemed like they just, weren't interested in each other and thought each other was bad. I mean, that's not to say they're going to support Biden, but to, have to, I guess, in theory, become a surrogate for their campaign. If you do things like that, you expose weakness. You expose a non-confidence in your candidates. And I don't know if this is traditional. I don't remember this being the case in the 2019 Democrat debates. But it just seems like a low confidence in candidates. And it's almost an admission, right? And that's what really gets me about this, is this debate was filled with, well, no, let me say it this way. It's almost like you have to play a little bit nice, because if you don't play nice, you aren't going to, some things might come out and you might, not be supported if you happen to win the nomination. So, don't use all your ammo. Don't blow someone out of the water like Tulsi did to Kamala. We gotta keep it, somewhat friendly. That's not how you run a debate. That's not how you show confidence. That's not how you propel forward. Okay? And again, I think the Republicans really, really, really screwed up here. Now, unfortunately, there's a couple places in the debate that I started doing timestamps like later on in my notes, but the first few I didn't, so we're gonna have to look for it. But the first thing I want to do is I want to take a look at something Nikki Haley said, which I thought was actually really important for Republicans to hear and Republicans to address, because this is actually true, and it's something that I've been harping on for a long time, and it's something that I feel is needs to be said. So let's look for Nikki Haley. It's going to be in the first.
And for the first time.
Yeah.
This song, striking such a.
And I will not.
Okay.
It's rock.
Sorry, guys.
Actually fix the problem.
Vice President Pence.
Okay, yeah, this is it.
They're all saying they told you how to fix.
Worried that American dream will not exist for our two sons.
We're just gonna have
and
to-
their generation unless we do something about it. And I do think Britta's going to take an outsider, because for a long time we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something.
Okay, we'll wait for Ramaswamy to finish, and they'll go to Nikki Haley. And her answer here is actually really powerful.
You hand it over to a new generation to actually fix the problem. That's
Sorry, guys, I know I should have timestamped it.
To you, Governor Haley. So why are you better positioned to turn around this economy that we've heard all of these voters talking about tonight than Mr. Ramaswamy, who is a successful entrepreneur nationally right now? He's beating you in the polls.
Well, I don't care about polls. What I care about the fact is that no one is telling the American people the truth. The truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Our Republicans did this to us, too. When they passed that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, they left us with 90 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. No one has told you how to fix it. I'll tell you how to fix it. They need to stop the spending. They need to stop the borrowing. They need to eliminate the earmarks that the Republicans brought back in. And they need to make sure they understand these are taxpayer dollars. It's not their dollars. And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt. And Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt, and our kids are never going to forgive us for this. And so at the end of the day, you look at the 2024 budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks, Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So you tell me who are the big spenders. I think it's time for an accountant in the White House.
Vice President.
Okay, she's absolutely correct. She's absolutely correct in this. What she said here is there is a lot of spending that's just gotten out of control. And now, this is not the forum, of course, to discuss how you're going to stop that spending. So that all sounds nice. And, unfortunately, she doesn't have like 10, 15 minutes to explain, like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to, get my party in line to stop the spending. This is how I'm going to, she doesn't have that time to explain it. But she's correct in that Trump added so much debt, and Republicans in general added a ton of debt to the national debt and spending, and especially in military. And she probably doesn't say that because obviously a lot of people in the crowd are Republicans, so they're gonna always be about supporting your military and blah blah blah. But she does say that in terms of, stopping the spending. And they all kind of say that, but she is the only one that calls out Republicans. And that's good, because the thing is that we need more of that so that Republicans, that are not necessarily in politics, Republicans that are going to be a little bit more, for instance, aversive or, they don't pay attention as much, they're going to pay attention to how their reps vote, right? They're going to not say, oh, just because you're a Republican means that you're, wanting to cut spending, you're going to want to cut government programs, you're going to want to cut this and that, public schooling, etc. Like, Republicans will actually pay attention to that. But we have to make, this kind of statement has to be made to people. And unfortunately, Haley said at the beginning, she doesn't care about polls. But when you make a statement like that, unfortunately, a lot of people just aren't going to listen to you because a lot of people write you off. So, like, a lot of people just kind of write her off as a neocon, and, she likes wars, and she likes this and that, and, that all may be true, but just because somebody is wrong about one thing doesn't mean they're wrong about everything, right? So, I think that one of the winning issues, like, that a candidate can this is something I think that a candidate can turn into a winning issue, because what they can do is really take people who are disenfranchised with the Republican Party and say, I'm running as a Republican, but I'm not necessarily just going to be your standard run-of-the-mill Republican. And so if everyone up there, obviously I like DeSantis and what he's done in Florida, but DeSantis on a national stage is going to have a lot more problems and a lot more trouble, because the thing about that is in Florida, he's had basically a supermajority in both houses. Even before this election, 2022, he had a majority in both houses. So he was able to kind of keep, everything in line and pass what he wanted. Now he has supermajority, so he doesn't even have, like, the Democrats to stop him, really. But that's not going to translate to a national stage, right? You're going to have a Senate that's probably going to be at odds with you, or at least be able to filibuster you. And then you're going to have a House that I think is probably going to be more Democrat-friendly at this point. I think that the Republicans may not keep the House this time. Actually, I think it's pretty likely that they won't keep the House. So, when you're trying to be the president and you're trying to advocate yourself, and your accomplishments, you have to remember that you're going to have a Congress that's probably going to be hostile towards you. And so that's why I think that, DeSantis has a little bit more trouble than he's projecting here. But what I will say is that I think that's a winning lane to at least gain support, is to really call out Republicans and separate yourself from them. And so we'll see if anybody takes that lane. I think that they're all trying to stand out in their own way. But you got to call out your own party, and because a lot of the people that are going to vote in the primary don't want just another Republican. So, okay. I want to talk about now, let's see, we're going to go to Mr. Pence here. This should be it.
I think unquestionably I'm the best prepared, the most tested, the most qualified and proven conservative in this race. I was a leader in the Congress of the United States. I led Indiana where we balanced budgets and had a AAA bond rating when I was governor. And as Vice President of the United States, we spent funding to backfill on the military cuts of the Obama administration, and then we were there in the worst pandemic in 100 years. All that being said, I was the first person in this race to say that we've got to deal with the long-term national debt issues. You got people on this stage that won't even talk about issues like Social Security and Medicare. I mean, Vivek, you recently said a president can't do everything. Well, I got news for you, Vivek. I've been in the hallway. I've been in the West Wing. A president of the United States has to confront every crisis facing America. I will put our nation back on the path to growth and prosperity and restore fiscal responsibility, just as I did in Congress and as governor and when I was vice president.
So, Pence has taken a lot of credit, and he does this a little bit later as well, but he seems to be taking a lot of credit for things that weren't his doing, especially as vice president. Like, later on, he mentions we, meaning, in the Trump administration, we appointed judges, right? No, you didn't appoint judges. It was Trump that appointed judges, right? And so I always found that to be really odd, like a really odd accomplishment, because that's kind of your job as president. Like, if you go to work and let's say you do, you're a salesperson and you go around and you meet your quota and then you brag about meeting your quota, like that's not, you didn't do anything special. Like if you doubled your quota, that would be, that would be special, but if you did what you're supposed to do, that gets you a paycheck. It doesn't earn you praise. It doesn't earn you, it just says, oh, you did what you were supposed to do. Here, you get paid. Right? And so the appointing the judges thing always seems very odd to me that they bring that up as an accomplishment, because, sure, you got judges appointed, but you didn't actually, that was what you're supposed to do. But anyway, Pence is in this lane of kind of, I want to say like just irrelevance, because he is like the anti-Trump but doesn't go after Trump as much. He's just kind of like trying to take the anti-Trump type of lane. Christie is like the hostile against Trump lane, but this guy is like trying to just be like, I'm not Trump and I'll just bring a sense of order back to, the White House, and I'll do it as a Republican, kind of a thing. Which I guess there's a place for, because a lot of people that vote for him probably won't vote for Trump and his candidates. But it seems like he's just very lost on, issues. He was attacked, by Ramaswamy, but others as well, a lot of times in this debate. And every time he lashed out, his attacks just fell very flat, right? They fell very flat. And, to say, oh, I was the first person that called for fiscal responsibility. What are you talking about? Like, that's kind of the Republican MO. I'm not saying they do it, but they always call for it, and cutting government spending and whatnot. So I just didn't find it. I don't know. We all know Pence is doomed. He's not going to win. He can't win. Not in this type of climate. There's no real lane for him. Yeah. I mean, not a lane that would be successful anyway. Okay. All right. I see a talking mug, so let me see what you got. Mr. Vice President, you will get your turn, but it's Silent Caster's time to speak. Yes, of course. Right now, DeSantis has Hurricane Idalia, and he's already filming commercials that will make it look like Florida would have sunk if not for him. Well, I mean, he did a really good job with, like, was it Irma, I think? He did a great job. He was there the entire time. And I don't think a lot of people I remember the Democrats tried to attack him on that, and it was just all the attacks like backfired. He really did a bad job. I'm sorry, he didn't do a bad job. The media did a really bad job because they tried to go after every angle, but he was pretty much there every day doing press conferences, getting support, manning evacuations, everything. Like he was at the forefront of that. And so Idalia, I think, is probably going to be, it might help him a little bit. I don't think it's the godsend that he's looking for. He does need something to give him a little bit more momentum, but we'll talk about him in a little bit too, because he just disappeared in this debate. He needs something to really get him back on the map, especially after just his campaign just struggling. He's been losing support. People have been abandoning him for other candidates, particularly Ramaswamy. But you can't lose support, with this, in this type of time frame. There's just not enough time to make that back. So I think that he's going to struggle a little bit. The appointment of judges is a bragging point. You are appointing someone and then talking to members of both parties to get them confirmed. You bragging that you were able to work with the other side successfully. So I get what you're saying. The thing is though, with judges, is that you are often not going to choose an activist judge unless you have a very friendly Congress, right? And so, when we talk about people like Neil Gorsuch, for instance, or don't know why I can't think of his name. He was attacked though. One of the other, the other guy that Trump appointed. I don't know why I can't think of his name. But when we talk about judges like that, like they voted against Trump in some of his initiatives, and so you're not getting like the most. What you're trying to do is you're trying to appoint judges that you have to sell as unbiased and is not going to let political, ideology dictate their decisions. But obviously, with Ketanji Brown Jackson, that is not going to be the case. And so a lot of times you have to have that friendly Congress, right? You have to have that Congress that will help you appoint people. And if I remember correctly, it was actually Manchin that was the tie-breaking vote. So they needed Manchin's vote in order to appoint, and they did it. So that, I guess you could call that a bragging point, but it's really, really, it's marginal, right? Like, you just have to, we could say the same about Biden because he's gotten some of his proposals through a Republican House, technically. I just don't feel it is a bragging point because it's something that if you have a hostile Congress, you have to do it anyway, right? You have to. It's just kind of part of the job. Now, if he, appointed a judge and, convinced like 10 Democrats to vote for that judge, I would be okay with that. I'd be like, okay, you had an extremely unfriendly Congress to you. You can't agree on anything, but yet you found, 10 people in the room to help you appoint your judge, or you found a judge that is agreeable to at least, those people in the room, because they all know one's going to be appointed. It's just a matter of who it is and how long they can delay it, right? So I guess, I see what you're saying. I just don't know that it's a point that you can really own, so to speak. All right, let's go on to the next. So we're going to go back to Nikki Haley again. Because just when I started to like her, just when I started to say, you know, maybe she's not so bad, then she does this. And it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, it's still just a terrible look. So...
Would you like to respond? Are you
So
bought and paid
what I
for?
would like to say is the fact that I think this is exactly why Margaret Thatcher said, if you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
And what was she... Let's see what she was responding to.
Listen. No, hold on. Enough. I had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT.
Okay. So, Nikki Haley is kind of just saying, hey, guys, hey, I have a vagina. I mean, first of all, you're insulting, like, half of the people, potentially, that are going to vote for you, right? You're saying, oh, I'm the only woman on this stage. Hey, remember, I'm a woman. I'm a female, guys. I'm a woman. You know, the Democrats don't know what that is, but I'm a woman. I'm one of them. Okay, Nikki Haley, we do understand that you are a woman. And if I'm not mistaken here, is this when they're talking about abortion? Let's see what she goes on to talk about.
First of all, we do care about clean air, clean water.
Okay,
We want to see that
environmentalism, I'm
taken
sorry.
care of, but there's a right way to do it. And the right way to do it is, first of all, yes, is climate change real? Yes, it is. But if you...
Okay, so she's talking about climate change and all that. So, why do you need to force that in when you're talking about an issue that is not even remotely sexual or, you know, has to do with your gender at all, which is climate change? Like, you're just kind of forcing that in. You're just forcing in a narrative just to say that, like, it seemed extremely forced. And the thing is like, okay, she did this in her announcement. And she said something like, when you kick, you know, Kim Jong-un's butt or whatever, and I'm paraphrasing here, it hurts even more when you do it with heels. Okay. Yes, you are a woman. You should not be relying on that. You know who else relied on that? Hillary Clinton. I mean, how many times did we hear that Hillary Clinton was a woman running for president? That she was the first, you know, woman nominee, like, you know, main party nominee, and blah, you know. And then she went on to write books about, you know, I lost because of sexism. You know, men wouldn't vote for me. The men that are Democrats just, you know, wouldn't vote for me. And that's why, you know, because, you know, people that, I guess, didn't like Trump, you know, just didn't, you know, said, well, I can't vote for a woman, and they just let it go. You know, you cannot rely on gimmicks to win. We know that you are a woman, Nikki. We know this, right? Nobody is, you know, I won't say nobody, because there probably are some people. Actually, I know one person that also does a politics show on Twitch, actually, that wouldn't vote for you because you're a woman. But other than that, I really don't know a lot of people that wouldn't vote for you because you're a woman. And you can't count on that. I didn't personally ask her, but she did introduce herself as that, so. And you can't count on that. So it's just a really terrible look. Like, that's something that a bunch of people cheered for, but then they'll probably go back later and think like, oh, she just insulted men for no reason, for climate change. Like, if she decided to do this, it would be a little bit more forgivable in abortion. And even then, like, when you go to the abortion debate area, you know, the portion of the debate, you know, you could say, like, you know, I'm the only woman on this stage. I'm the only person that says, you know, or the only person that can say I've born 2 children, right? I've actually done that, and, you know, it was difficult, and I wouldn't trade that experience in. And so, you know, you can appeal that way and remind people that you're a woman there because it's actually appropriate. But this is not. It's not appropriate in the climate change discussion, which is nothing, you know? This is the only thing that's appropriate here is to talk about climate change. And so I just think she made a blunder here. And she probably rehearsed that line and really wanted to say it because, again, it just feels so forced. And so I would tell her campaign manager, not that her campaign manager would listen to me, but if he or she is listening to me, you should probably not be doing that with her. You probably shouldn't be directing her to do that, because otherwise, Nikki Haley did pretty well in this debate. She actually did pretty well and raised some points from that I didn't really hear a lot on stage. And so, if she can do that, you know, I'm not saying she has a path to victory here, but she could definitely, you know, get into the double digits. But she has to be a little bit more, you know, you can't attack half the people that potentially will vote for you. You can't pull the Hillary Clinton stuff because it didn't work for her. Certainly not going to work for you. I mean, Hillary Clinton, for all of her faults, was a tier 1 candidate. You know, Nikki Haley is like a tier 3, right? So you gotta, I guess you just gotta do better. Just do better. Anyway, that would be my advice to Miss Haley. I have Asa Hutchinson here for some reason, talking about legislation. I think it is abortion. So let's get to...
Because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because...
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get to Asa Hutchinson on abortion because we all want to hear what he has to say, right? Asa Hutchinson is incredibly important.
Or gave it back to the elected representatives, whether it's the states or whether it's the United States Congress.
Oh, okay.
There is authority, and that's why President Biden is pushing for a Democrat proposal, which is, in essence, abortion on demand through the term. So they have their extreme position at a national level. It's most likely going to be addressed in the states, but it's certainly fine for it to be addressed at the national level as well. Arkansas has the record of being the most pro-life state in the nation. I signed 30 pro-life pieces of legislation while I was governor. And every state can determine a different outcome here. And it is the most important issue for women and for the unborn child and for our country that we get this right. It's going to be a continued debate. Let's talk about it in terms...
Okay. Here's what I want to talk about with Hutchinson here. That's a scary response, and probably one of the reasons this guy, I would vote for Biden over this guy, okay? I would vote for Biden because that is a extremely scary response. He just kind of says abortion is a really important issue, And so the Supreme Court, you know, because I think this was in response to Doug Burgum, and what Doug Burgum said was, you know, the federal court kicked it back to the lower level. And actually, let's let, this is, Doug Burgum just said this. It's actually a really good response, which is something we should listen to, because it's actually a really intelligent response and something I think Republicans should hear.
The rest are left to the states, comma, or importantly, or to the people. We need to get back to freedom and liberty for the people in this country. And we can't have Republicans who fight for 50 years for this great cause, and when we turn it back to the states, and then the next day they turn around and go, no, the feds should do that, because the feds are stepping into people's lives, they're stepping into people's businesses. Over and over, if we say that the Fed should be in on this one, where do we stop? I say that we follow the Constitution, and this is returned to the states. This is where it should be.
Okay. And then they ask him a stupid question. They're like, you signed a 15-week abortion ban or a 6-week abortion. They ask him a really stupid question. It's like, yes, he was the governor of a state. He just said it should be returned to the states. And then they're like, but governor, you signed a 6-week. It's like, well, yes, he's a governor of a state. So yeah, he would have the authority to sign that. But that's a good answer, because he's saying Republicans are celebrating overturning Roe versus Wade, you know, saying it shouldn't be at a federal level, and then they want to do something at a federal level about abortion. You can't have it both ways, Republicans. This is a good response. A really good response, right? And the thing is that Asa Hutchinson comes in and says, well, you know, like, yeah, it was kicked to the states, and a lot of times it's going to be states' issue, but the federal government can do something about it too. Oh my God! Like, why do you want to give more power to the federal government over anything, really? But, you know, over abortion, which you just celebrated as being kicked down to the states, and saying, you know, what works for this state won't work for that state, blah, blah, blah. That is something that I would never support. And like I said, that is a deal-breaking issue for me. Biden, I would vote for Biden over Asa Hutchinson. I would vote for Kamala Harris over Asa Hutchinson. Because, you know, at least with that, I get funny speeches. You know, she would probably do the same thing. She'd just advocate for, you know, everyone else. She would at least be honest and say, I want more power in the federal government. Like, I want more centralized power. Asa Hutchinson, you know, is kind of a snake in the grass. So Asa Hutchinson is a really wishy-washy Republican from Arkansas, former governor. I have no idea why he's on the stage over, like, Larry Elder. I just don't know. But he's pretty... Yeah, that's a pretty scary thing for him to say. So I wanted to just go over that. And... you know, just kind of highlight that. I got two more things. Yeah. Well, I think that's where we're going next, is I think we're going to Mike Pence. Gotta find him. Yeah, I think that's where we're going next.
I mean, it's extraordinary to think about the violence that's claiming innocent lives. Well,
okay.
Part to blame is the Democrats been talking about defunding the police.
Actually, I think it's earlier in the...
And we ought to be funding law enforcement, particularly in our major cities, at unprecedented...
Yeah, so...
We're better than what the Democrats are selling. We are not going to allow abortion all the way up till birth, and we will hold them accountable for their extremism.
But just to be clear, Governor,
see, what a crappy
I'm going to stand on the side of life. Look, I understand Wisconsin
Again,
is going to do it different than Texas. I understand Iowa and New Hampshire are going to do different. But I will support the cause of life as governor and as president.
Vice President Pence, you're shaking your head. Hold on, Senator. Vice President Pence, you're shaking your head.
Well, look, I'm not new to this cause. After I gave my life to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I opened up.
Try to listen to his whole response.
Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And see, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. And I knew from that moment on, the cause of life had to be my cause. And I've been a champion for life in the Congress, a champion for life as governor and as vice president. And to be honest with you, Nikki, you're my friend, but consensus is the opposite of leadership. When the Supreme Court returned this question to the American people, they didn't just send it to the states only. It's not a states-only issue, it's a moral issue. And I promise you, as President of the United States, the American people will have a champion for life in the Oval Office. Can't we have a minimum standard in every state in the nation that says when a baby is capable of feeling pain, an abortion cannot be allowed? A 15-week ban is an idea whose time has come. It's supported by 70% of the American people.
Okay. So we hear about this idea, right? And so first of all, we know that Pence is taking an evangelical route. He's really trying to get the evangelicals that will not vote for Trump to vote for him. And that is Pence's lane, right? That is the way that Pence gets a portion of the vote, and then he tries to build from there. He tries to build enough of a coalition that will stand behind him and vote for him because he is the Christian. He is, and there's still obviously an incredibly strong portion of the Republican Party that is, Christian and incredibly evangelical. But what does he do here? He just kind of gives a idea of not allowing abortion, wanting to do a 15-week ban, and he kind of attacks Nikki Haley, which Nikki Haley actually had a decent response too. She said, 70% of the senators, won't vote for it. And she's right. Like, you got to pass something through Congress. And so, she's saying, to advocate for life and whatnot. And again, they never touch the issue. They never touch the issue because Republicans are just not, they're just not smart enough. I don't understand why Republicans and a lot of pro-life people just cannot get it through their head. But they just cannot get through their head who is having abortions. Who has abortions? Who has them, Republicans? I know you can get them. I know you can get the answer. Like, you just gotta search, and you just gotta maybe go hang out at a few abortion clinics and find out. And the answer is late 20s single women that would be raising a child in a broken family anyway. And so, how do you stop abortions? Men, you teach men to respect women and to control their inhibitions and try to actually date and bring back, chivalry. And then you teach women to have confidence in themselves and trust, and what the secret to men and having them worship you and your feet, because that's what men do for women. Okay? When they really like a woman, that's what they'll do. And I know a lot of people that, read the Bible and everything is, you know, they will tell me, you know, oh, the man's supposed to be the head of the... No, like, you have to remember, like, Eve's the one that told Adam to eat the apple, right? Like, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what you have to do. You have to realize your power as a woman, okay? In that you're able to really influence and have a man ready to do everything for you, right? And so women don't realize this. They instead think that they are not worthy of being respected, and they'll go after men that are undisciplined, and they will give their bodies away to men that don't deserve it, and that's what leads to single women getting pregnant. That's it, guys. That's it. And how do I know this? How do I know this? Well, you know, a lot of times when we look at like polls and whatnot, like a lot of times we see like, okay, you know, something might be 52 to 48. Or even like certain, you know, statistics could be like, you know, 5%, you know, of men, or, you know, like a lot of times you'll have like 60-40, you know, statistically. No, you have abortions at 90+% of what I just said. Single women in their late 20s that are unable or unwilling to raise a child. And what Republicans will never do is they will never go to the base issue and say, you should start a family and maybe, you know, control yourself on a sexual nature and wait until you're ready to have kids with, you know, to the women, a man that loves you, and to the men, a woman that you've earned their respect. Right? Folks, I don't know how to make it any easier. I don't know how to make it any more obvious than that. And yet we're having this debate about whether the federal government or the state government or, you know, whatever should be able to stop women from getting abortions. And the issue doesn't matter. Again, the best way to make something go out of business is to take away their customers. Do you know how to take away the customers of abortion clinics? You stop having single women getting abortions and getting pregnant when they're not ready for it. That's it, guys. That's all you have to do. But no, we have to talk about the government. The government is responsible for making sure that you don't get an abortion. Government, come save me. So again, Republicans, terrible strategy. They never, ever will preach this message. I don't know why. Like, this is one of the things I actually don't know why, because you would think Republicans, especially somebody that's going in the evangelical lane, would preach this message. It seems so simple. Let's see, what did Rain said? Who has abortions? Our mistresses? Yeah, pretty much. You could also teach women to stop having delusional standards. You could also teach men and women about contraception and stop encouraging hookup culture. Just an idea. That's exactly it. I mean, the thing is that, again, a lot of these women having abortions are non-self-respecting women. And I'm not trying to disrespect them by saying that. It's because they haven't been taught usually by a father, because they often grow up in a fatherless household, that you are a special, you are very special. I don't know where I was going, but you are very special. And you don't just want to give your body to any man, because the thing is you have a lot of power over men, because men will find you very attractive, and men will want to have your attention and be with you. And to teach them about the psychology of a man, which is men have egos, okay? And men want to feel needed and loved and accepted, and they want to feel attractive. And one of the ways that women can do that is to, show interest and to, when a man wants something from that woman, and they're not married or whatever, not in a long-term relationship, to say, hey, like, you have to be patient. You have to wait for me to be ready, and I'm not ready yet, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the man is completely absolved from responsibility. The man also has to have self-control and self-discipline, right? And to say, hey, I'm going to have the patience to work on myself and become this provider and this, excellent specimen for this woman. I'm going to work out. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to take care of, money. I'm going to improve whatever I need to improve. And then this woman will look at me and want me and reassure me, right? And then the woman says, that is what I deserve. I deserve a man who's going to be patient, who's going to wait for me, who's going to, be there when I need him and want him, that I want to raise a child with, that I want to, have assistance from and go through life together. But if women don't respect themselves, what they will do is they won't make that man be patient, right? They won't do that. And so they will, give their body away. And usually end up with a guy that just, if he has no self-discipline to wait for you, he's not going to have self-discipline in a lot of other areas in his life, right? So, he's going to have a lot of trouble with finances. He's going to have a lot of trouble with, criminality. He's going to have a lot of, other issues. And probably because he also grew up in a fatherless household. But the thing is that this are just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. We argue an issue that really we could stop. We don't need a law. We don't need Congress, either at a state or a federal level, to pass a law to deal with this. We just have to deal with it on a cultural level. If abortions become tragedies rather than celebrations, well, guess what happens? Nobody wants to get them. They become a last resort rather than the first option. But Republicans never, ever, ever, ever even consider that. They just go, I want a law. I want the government to tell you what you should and should not do. And I'm going to say it's morally just. Morality is on my side. You're never going to win on this issue, Republicans, because you just cannot bring it home. You cannot bring that idea home. The government shouldn't be telling you what to do and what to not do. Society, if society doesn't like an idea, they will reject it. All right. Enough about that. Let's see what we got here. So we got prosecutor. I have prosecutor issue for Chris Christie. Let's see what's going on.
Ran the 5th largest office in America in a state where there is significant urban crime. And the problem is not going to be solved by more money. The problem is that these prosecutors in these localities in the states are refusing to do their job and to arrest violent criminals. So what President Christie would do is appoint an attorney general who would instruct each of the 93 U.S. attorneys that they are to take over the prosecution of violent crime in every one of those cities that are failing to do so. We have plenty of room in the federal prisons to lock up these violent criminals and clean up what's going on all across this country in these individual cities. Secondly, what we need to make sure that each and every one of these criminals understand is that the laws apply to everybody. And when Hunter Biden fills out a fake application, a false application for a gun permit, and then is facing a 10-year mandatory minimum, which was mandated by legislation sponsored by his father, and then you have a Justice Department that walks away from those charges, we're telling people that the law doesn't apply to everybody. In a Christie administration, he would go to jail for 10 years.
What about a president?
Okay. Well, first of all, Chris Christie has an issue here. And that is, he is talking about legislation that he probably... Well, I don't know if he supports it or not, because he didn't really comment on that. He said it was sponsored by Biden. But it's gun legislation, so we have to assume that, it was a Democrat proposal. Don't know if Chris Christie supports or goes against it. He didn't say here. He just said it was sponsored by Biden. But the thing is that what we have to realize is, first of all, I mean, I guess it is your duty as a certain, to an extent, to uphold the laws whether you agree with them or not. So I guess I give him the credit there. That being said, maybe, kind of pivot into, we shouldn't have laws like that to begin with, and, use that as a springboard into, maybe talking about corruption and how Biden has a law that, he passed, that he's responsible for, that his own son got to disobey and, get a slap on the wrist for. That probably would have been a better answer. I don't think that Christie has enough of a, I don't think he has enough strategy to do that. And I can't blame him necessarily, because the thing about Christie is, this is kind of on the spot. He probably want to talk about Hunter Biden a little bit. And, because he knows that tends to get, some people follow the Hunter Biden saga a lot more than I do. And they tend to get a little bit more, personally invested in that situation, where they, want to, it's almost like a soap opera to find out, where Hunter was storing crack this week and what he was doing, last week and everything. So it's almost like, like I said, almost like a soap opera for those people. But the thing is that what Christie said about Republicans is that Republicans are in I'm sorry, not Republicans. What he said about prosecutors is that prosecutors are going to federally essentially take over cities. If they're not pursuing crime, then they need to, be, I guess, federally commanded to pursue crime the way that, well, I don't know how he would do that. I mean, I don't know how you appoint an attorney general that specifically, combs through every single city and says, oh, you're not prosecuting these people, so we need to, do that, kind of do that. It gives a lot of responsibility to the federal government in order to have them prosecute crimes, especially in cities where, there's different rules and different laws and a different culture. Now, I'm going to try to be charitable to him and say that, maybe violent crimes is what he's talking about, or, crimes that are kind of federally, against federal law. And if that's the case, then, okay, I get it, but, then why not just kind of overtake the prosecution instead then? If he just, I guess what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to, I don't know how he would have the authority to go into a city government and replace that prosecutor, right? And so it's just kind of it's an answer like that makes me just think that Christie's blowing a lot of hot air. So yeah, I think that Christie's a bad candidate. Because one of the things that he does later in the debate, and I don't really have this down, I only have one more thing to get to, because the rest of the debate after this is kind of just trading blows and going back and forth. And I want to talk a little bit, before we end tonight, a little bit about each of the candidates and kind of how they performed just based on, their body language and what they had to say. But again, doesn't really talk about, family and doing things and, stopping crime at a base level. Instead, we just keep talking about we need to prosecute crime. And that's only one side of the equation. But we need to make sure that, offenders of crime, or, crime offenders, I guess, we want to discourage people from doing it. And we can do that at a governmental level, but we also have to do it at a community level, right? And so one of the things that the Democrats talk about, and it's actually not a terrible idea, is they talk about, for instance, like defund the police. Well, if you're going to defund police, you have to put that money, ideally, you would put it into communities and say, let's stop crime before it begins, right? And so if you're going to do that, then you have to do it at a family level. Now, when the Democrats talk about it, they talk about it more in terms of like sending social workers and sending like, people to, crime scenes that aren't, when the crime's already happened, rather than, investing in communities to encourage the family unit. To go into broken households with, maybe to tie something to a broken household, a single parent, and say, if you want support from the government, you have to, and you're a single mom or you're a single dad, you have to participate in this particular program where we're going to have, you're going to have to take your kid to events, where, in your local community where, maybe a mom or a dad or whatever, is gathering kids up and, taking them out and, taking them for games or ice cream or to play, football in the yard or whatever. To me, that's a way to encourage family action but we don't hear these ideas. We just hear that we need to hire more police and we need to be harder on prosecutors. Which, again, not the most helpful. We just attack the symptom. We never attack the root cause. So let's talk about the last thing I want to get to in the debate, and then we'll go over, kind of what the candidates did. And it was Ramaswamy, and this is actually probably one of the best answers I've heard in the debate, talking about this purpose.
It is a total reset from the top, saying that this is what it means to be an American. Yes, we will stand for the rule of a mental health epidemic in this country.
Okay, let's talk about, or let's back up.
Mental health institutions, we have seen a spike in violent crime. Do we have the spine to bring them back? I think we should. As president, I will. But it's not just drugging up people in those psychiatric institutions with Zoloft and Seroquel. It's a deeper issue. I think faith-based approaches can play a role here, too. We're in the middle of a national identity crisis. And I say this as a member of my generation. The problem in our country right now, the reason we have that mental health epidemic, is that people are so hungry for purpose and meaning at a time when family, faith, patriotism, hard work have all disappeared. What we really need is a total reset from the top, saying that this is what it means to be an American. Yes, we will stand for the rule of law. Yes, we will close the southern border where criminals are coming in every day. And yes, we will back law enforcement because we remember who we really are. And that's also how we address that mental health epidemic in the next generation that is directly leading to violent crime.
Actually, we're gonna play a little bit more, because that's where we have a good answer, and then we're gonna see Pence try to unsuccessfully attack Ramaswamy in this. So let's go ahead and listen to this. And this is a little bit of a long exchange, but it's interesting.
DeSantis, really quickly. Governor DeSantis.
We don't have an identity crisis, Vivek. We're not looking for a new national identity. The American people are the most faith-filled, freedom-loving, idealistic, hard-working people the world has ever known. We just need government as good as our people.
Well, Mike, I think the difference is you might have, some others like you may have on the stage, it's Morning in America speech. It is not Morning in America. We live in a dark moment, and we have to confront the fact that we're in an internal, sort of cold cultural civil war.
You are
and we have to
equating the
recognize
American
that
people with a failed government in Washington, D.C. We just need government as good as our people again.
So I'm going to finish addressing that slogan because I don't know what that slogan means. We need to shut down the administrative state.
So, as you can see, Mike Pence was part of that failed Washington, D.C. government that he wanted to take credit for earlier in the debate. He wanted to take credit for, appointing judges, which Trump did. He wanted to take credit for, balancing the budget and having fiscal responsibility, which Trump had none of. I guess he did it in Indiana, but doing that at a federal, in Indiana, in a red state that's in the middle of the country, where you have a friendly Congress, for a friendly governor or a friendly, red state, I guess he wanted to take credit for whatever Trump did with the economics in, when Trump was in office. So Ramaswamy, like I said, Mike Pence's attacks fall really flat because Ramaswamy kind of dismissed them appropriately here, because what he did was, first of all, he talked about, you can kind of tell that he's talked with people, and he's saying, like, there's a dark moment that we're all experiencing, here in the country. And Mike Pence is trying to say, the American people is filled with patriotism and blah, 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 and all this wonderful, stuff. And, the thing is Mike Pence hasn't really gone to, Tampa, where I drive every day. You don't, like, I drive to East Tampa every day, and I drive through a pretty rough neighborhood. And those people aren't filled with hope and wonder and blah, blah, blah. Those people are kind of filled with anger and resentment and despair and, you know, in some cases, not many, but in a lot of cases, violence. You know, it's a dark time for a lot of people that, you know, aren't at the top. And Mike here is very tone deaf in that fact that he thinks that, you know, Americans are, you know, like, he comes from Indiana, probably a nice gated community where the, you know, they're having barbecues every Tuesday and Wednesday. But the thing is that this is just not, this is not the case for a lot of Americans, right? This is not the case, especially with the economy where it's at. A lot of people are, you know, fighting to put a little bit of food on the table. A lot of people are fighting to, you know, just stay afloat in an economy that, you know, constantly is, you know, being inflated, and people are spending money like left and right. Well, I should say the government is spending money left and right, and they're not feeling the relief of people that will, or they're not feeling the relief that Pence is saying, you know, is just, you know, part of Americanism. And that's why, you know, it's very easy for a lot of, you know, conservatives to forget that, you know, a lot of Americans are suffering because they often do live in a middle-class society where, you know, they are not in dire straits. They're not paycheck to paycheck. They're not, you know, wondering how they're going to put food on the table. And I've been there. And the thing is I talk to a lot of these people because for some reason in the poker community, there is this, I guess, concept that is really popular, that if you want to make sure you are the richest person at the table, right? You want to make sure that people know how much money you have. And this happens a lot in poker. I'm not saying everyone does it. It just happens to be a common thing to run into. And I don't understand it, but I do understand that there's a lot of tone-deaf people out there because they just say, you know, they don't know how poor people live. They don't know, you know, how to not have their money as a shield. And the fact is that, you know, I have been in that dumpster before, you know, metaphorically, and been very poor and wondered how I was going to keep the lights on, had to choose between, you know, electric and food, I should say, had to choose between, you know, fixing the car or fixing, you know, the fridge, etc. Things like that, right? I mean, I've been there before. And it's not a fun place to be. And you don't feel like anybody cares. And to those people, I mean, I don't think I have very many in the audience, if any. But to those people, first of all, the government isn't going to save you. The government will maybe provide you handouts, but, you know, that's not going to go very far. And they're always going to make sure that, you know, they have you. When you take those handouts, right? They're always going to make sure that they got you hanging on, and there's control that comes with that. But the second thing I'm going to say is that you have to understand that the government isn't the answer, you know, and you have to I want to say pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I don't want to say that, but you have to figure out what marketable skill you can bring and then bring that, right? And that doesn't always have to be like, you know, coding and, you know, college degree and everything. I mean, there's a lot of trades that you can go into that works well for people. And you just have to be able to do that. And sometimes that means more sacrifice than you're already doing, but there's patience. There's a lot of patience that goes in that. So, unfortunately, the government isn't your answer, but a lot of people want to believe that there's hope, and they want to believe that somebody in government is going to be able to at least alleviate those pressures. And so what Vivek does is he kind of throws a bone to those people and comforts them and says, hey, I understand, and we're in a dark time, and people are really passing through, and they don't know how they're going to put, food on the table. And so Pence lives in this world where apparently, putting food on the table is no problem, and it's not something you have to worry about. And so that's what Pence was doing all night. He was kind of sticking his foot in it. And yeah, it never worked for him. Excuse me. So anyway, that's what I got on the debate itself. There's a lot more of the debate that we could have gone over and watched and everything, but it's basically all the same. How I think what happened here is, first of all, DeSantis, came in as the second front runner, I guess. DeSantis comes in, looks kind of, just didn't get a lot of speaking time, waited his turn a lot, didn't interject. Whereas like Pence and Haley, you could tell they were really fighting. I think Pence was on the losing end of that exchange. I think Haley might gain a couple points from it because she really was fighting. And she did a good job overall. I think that she did a good job. I don't think she's going to get anywhere near what she needs, but I think she did all right. And hopefully got her ideas across and, talked about being honest with people. I think Ron DeSantis is going to continue to slowly bleed support. Again, he really needed to have a standout performance. And the fact that he let Ramaswamy, Haley, and Pence, and to a lesser degree Christie, take control of the stage is going to work against him, because inaction is sliding backwards, right? So you don't just get to have a average debate performance. You have to actually come out of there swinging, especially when a lot of eyes were on him, because, again, nobody watched that Trump Tucker Carlson interview. Nobody cares. If they do, they're already on Trump's side. You're not going to change them, right? So nobody cared about that. So you had to come out swinging, and he just didn't. I think Ramaswamy did the best because, like him or hate him, a lot of people do hate him, but he sounded like he was really talking to a lot of the audience and could relate to them. So I think he's gonna gain some support. I think he's gonna gain some of the soft support that Trump had. Again, probably 5 to 10 points is where I think is going to come from Trump. You're probably not going to see a lot of it necessarily reflected, because Trump's still going to have an overwhelming margin of a lead. But I think you are going to see him take a little bit of support. It's not all going to go to Ramaswamy. Maybe half of it goes to him, another couple points to Haley. And so I think, and then obviously there's going to be some that comes from DeSantis. I think DeSantis is going to continue to slip in the polls. Who else do we have? We have Asa Hutchinson. Nothing's going to happen because he's already pretty much at 0. So he's just going to remain at 0. Doug Burgum didn't even know who he was before he came into the debate. He actually had a couple good answers, and it, sounded more like a libertarian sounding candidate, and that's good. But he has no chance, obviously. So those two we're just going to leave there. Tim Scott, nothing memorable to me. I listened to his responses, sounded very much like a typical Republican to me. Nothing stand out about his performance. Nothing good, nothing bad. You know, I don't remember anything he said, and I didn't cover anything he said. So we got that. And then we have Christie. Again, Christie has taken the anti-Trump vote. I think he's just trying to make a splash, make a statement, and see how much of the vote, would be with the anti-Trump. When I said, and that's different from the non-Trump, that's the anti-Trump, right? Like the people that really hate Trump kind of vote. That's the kind of lane that he's running in. I don't think he can move the polls very much because that's kind of his main issue. Other than that, he sounds, like pretty typical Republican. Pence, I think, is going to lose support here. I don't think he'll bleed as much as Ron DeSantis. Like, he might lose a point or two. Probably won't notice it very much, but some of it might go to Haley, some of it might go to Ramaswamy. Probably won't go to Trump. And yeah, I mean, I do think that if Trump falls consistently below 50, which I do think he'll fall a little bit, I don't know that he'll fall below 50 consistently, but I think if he falls a little bit below 50, he will need to show up at the next debate. You just can't afford to not have your ideas and platforms put out there. And the thing is that Trump had a really rough last year of his presidency. And yes, you have that rabid base that is going to vote for you and follow you no matter where you go. But that's not enough to win in a general, right? You need to kind of convince people now that you are going to be having their best interest in mind in your next term. And to hide from that field is not going to play out well for you come the general election. And so I get that you did it this time because you can pretty much afford it, and you might want to see, how much of a hit you take. And again, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Trump won the debate, even though he wasn't there. He didn't. That is a mistake to believe that. I think he will lose some points, but if he goes to the next one and he doesn't hide, and he, because he's good at debating, let him attack you, and you're gonna be able to. He's gonna be able to do well against them. Yeah, and I think Ramaswamy is, going to pull out and have the most gain in support. I do think he's going to become second place. And Trump might end up, kind of approaching him as a running mate, because I think Ramaswamy is going to be the most formidable opponent for him. Taking kind of the same lane that Trump is taking, but, people are kind of tired of old man and, like old man versus old man. Like, we have enough, 70 and 80-year-olds in Congress. We could probably do with someone younger and someone that's going to, and this is not to do with policy or anything. This is not to say who's a better candidate. It's just, I think that people want a contrast. And I think Ramaswamy has enough energy behind him and enough newness behind him that he would do better. And I think he also attacks issues where it hurts. He attacks issues at a base level. And not as much as I would like, but definitely more than any of the other candidates. Like I said, Nikki Haley had the two good answers there, with the abortion and with the accounting. And it did make me interested to hear more from her, but I don't know how much of a impact it's going to make. So those are my thoughts on the debate. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I appreciate everybody coming out. I know it's been a long time since I've streamed. And hey, what's up, Romper Stomper? How you doing? I know it's been a long time since I've streamed. Unfortunately, I have had a lot going on. We're gonna have, I'm just gonna let y'all know, I'm going to, as long as the hurricane doesn't, blow me away, I'm going to Vegas. I will try to stream from Vegas in the hotel room one of the days. I don't know that it will be Sunday, but I will do what I can and keep you all updated. As long as Best Western, which is where I'll be staying, or DoubleTree, one of the two, has a good enough internet, then I'll do it, and we'll just go from there. So everybody, take care. Have a wonderful evening. Let's see. If Ed's on, I'll go ahead and rate him. Let's find out. This is gonna... Oh, no, it didn't. Okay. So we'll go ahead and rate Ed. You guys take care. Have a good night. I will see you all next time. Yeah, Vegas. I go a couple times a year, so it's always fun.